time for Comeback Sports with Brandon, the Coach Perry, and Pat, the Shot Caller Flaherty. Here we go.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Comeback Sports, our weekly sports talk show where we give you 10 topics of all the different sports going on across the country, across the globe. I am one of the co-hosts, Pat the Shot Caller Flaherty, and as always, I'm joined by my partner, Brandon the Coach Perry. Brandon, how you doing on this hot, sticky, nasty, super crappy? I mean, it's not crappy weather, but it's so freaking hot out. It's uncomfortable here in Massachusetts. How you doing, though?
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. It's one of those things where, like you said, in the winter we're complaining about the snow, and then in the summer we're complaining about the heat. But you fans are lucky that I'm actually doing this show with a shirt on because it is that hot out here right now. But I will say big shout out to our super fans, Jack Barrows and Brian Chance. And I also want to give a shout out to one of our new subscribers, Jason Gia. Welcome to the Comeback Sports Train, man. But yeah, big shout out to our fans and our new subscribers. And I got another thing for you. Tonight at midnight, Lionel Messi will become a free agent coming off a 4-year, $674 million contract. That's how much he just made over the last 4 years. Wow.
Yeah, people think that professional athletes in America make a lot of money. Oh, my goodness. And that's going to be nuts at midnight tonight. So we don't have that as an official topic for tonight, but I'm glad you brought that up because that is massive news across the international sports globe. Now, folks, before we get going, as usual, our Twitter handles are at the bottom of the screen, so make sure you check those out. Also, at the bottom of the screen, right there in the middle, you can call into the show and ask us a question, give us a comment about how the show's going, one of the topics you might want to comment on. Make sure you call that number. And finally, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to Comeback Sports, this show right here. When our fantastic producer, Ben Kudo, cuts up each individual segment, it goes to that Comeback Sports subscription. It'll just feed right into your YouTube app. You can just watch it right there. You don't got to search for it. It's going to show right up as soon as you go on the subscription. So make sure you do that if you like what you see here on Comeback Sports. First things first here, topic number one, we're going to get into the NBA playoffs because that's the hottest sport right now. They're getting down to the wire here. We got 4 teams left. It's the conference finals. And I think a lot of us thought that the Clippers, Brennan, were done. They were dead. I mean, no Kawhi. They picked up one game early, but they were down 3-1 in the series. Then on Monday night, the Clippers come back. Paul George, monster game for him. The Clippers defeat the Suns 116-102. Impressive performance by the LA Clippers when they were in desperation mode.
Yeah, like you called it, desperation mode. It was one of those winner-go-home moments, and playoff Paul showed up, man. There was a couple of moments in this series where we talked about him being pandemic Paul again, especially at the free throw line. But in this game, he showed up big and was consistently knocking down his free throws. So it was just the complete opposite, and then the Clippers got the complete opposite of what they had, most of the series. They went out and got a W and put themselves pretty much back in this series. So it's just really one of those things where I thought with the Suns, especially with Chris Paul coming back, that they were going to look to, put this series in a chokehold and kind of finish it off. But the Clippers really just showed that, they're still hanging around for a reason, and they've gotten this far in the playoffs for a reason. They have good depth and they have good players all around. But Paul George really showed up and showed that he is a star in the NBA. I mean, he dropped a 41-piece nugget on the Suns, and it was just pretty much getting anything he wanted. Scored 20 points in the third quarter. I believe 20 of the team's 32 in the third quarter. So he really was going off there. And there was a couple of moments where he was just getting it from anywhere he wanted. Mid-range, 3-point, pulling up from off the dribble, driving to the hoop. There was pretty much anything that he could do. I mean, I don't think I saw him miss a shot for, I think he was like 7 for 7 or 8 for 8 until he missed a shot. So he was pretty much on fire, and like I said, from short range, from deep range, from anywhere you want. But I mean, he even got to hit one of the 3-pointers that he hit was kind of a dagger, to be honest, for the Suns. So it was just really one of those things where you got to see that Paul George is obviously a superstar, like we said, in the NBA, and he really showed up in a big moment for his team and put him on his back personally, and kept his team in the series.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I thought the Clippers were done. And like you said, before probably the last 6 maybe Clippers playoff games, Paul George was always considered to not be a playoff performer. You mentioned he calls himself Playoff Paul, but then a lot of analysts and fans, including myself, were like, well, you haven't done it in the playoffs, so what are you talking about? Struggled in the bubble last year. We always knew he was going to be the second banana to Kawhi Leonard, but he's showing that he might be one of those top guys. He hasn't been able to do it in the past, but these last couple of games have been very impressive. 41 points, like you mentioned, he had 13 rebounds, 6 assists. You mentioned the 20 points in the fourth quarter when the Clippers need it the most. I mean, when you're losing your top guy and your second in command comes in and just dominates games, that's exactly why they got Paul George. So we're not sure when Kawhi is going to come back. We're starting to see now in the NBA, and throughout this entire postseason, there's been every team's had an injury to a really important player. And we're going to get to a bigger topic in the next section, but about the other series. But when a guy like Kawhi goes out, Paul George steps up, and you also saw some other players from the Clippers really step up as well. Marcus Morris had, or Markieff Morris, I forget which Morris brothers on the Clippers. I always mix these guys up. One of the Morrises had 22 points, and then Reggie Jackson's been excellent in the postseason. A guy who isn't always consistent, but is kind of like that, Vinnie Johnson, kind of the microwave off the bench kind of player. He can score in bunches, and you're now seeing the talent of Reggie Jackson as well. And then DeMarcus Cousins comes off the bench, scores 15 for the Clippers. So, that combined with the fact that I think Chris Paul, even though he's back, we saw a ton of players this year get COVID, and then it took a while to recover. It took a while to get your wind back. It took a while to kind of get your legs back just because of the nature of the pandemic and nature of the disease. So it might take a while for Chris Paul to fully recover to where he was before he got COVID. Now, again, we heard from Jalen Rose that supposedly he got the vaccine, so that means that it probably didn't hit him as hard as one of the other guys that got it during the season who maybe wasn't vaccinated yet. But still, I'm sure it takes some time to get back. So he hasn't quite looked right since he's come back from COVID, but we'll see if that changes in Game 6 or if it's forced to Game 7. We'll see it then. Game 6 is tonight, so that's going to be a fun one for a lot of NBA fans to watch in this, what has become a good series. We thought the series was going to be over in 5, but not so much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, first things first, I've still got the Suns winning this series, and I'm still picking the Suns to win the NBA Finals at this point. But it's really one of those things where I think the Clippers are doing a good job hanging around still and putting themselves in a position to try to win. And honestly, I thought when they said, Zubac was out, I thought DeAndre Ayton was going to kind of just destroy the Clippers and kind of get anything he wanted. And he had himself a good game, but I thought he was going to have a much bigger game. And like I said, a defining moment, especially with the Clippers center out. And he just kind of really didn't do that. Instead, the guy that stole the spotlight was Paul George, putting up those big numbers, almost a triple-double with 41 points. So it was just huge. But, a quick note, like you said, you brought up Reggie Jackson, who I think has played a great playoffs and is really one of those role players that every NBA player, every NBA team needs. But one of the funny things is he looks like a hip hop artist called Bobby Shmurda. And there's a funny clip of him at the free throw line with the crowd actually chanting out Bobby Shmurda, and he does the shmoney dance, which is one of this guy's dances. So Reggie Jackson, great, fan favorite, I would say at this point in the NBA, but he's doing a great job, obviously, here in the playoffs and hit some big shots and had a couple of great drives and had a big dunk down the stretch there too. That really was helping the Clippers out. So, yeah, he's chipping in as much as he needs to kind of help this team go along. But obviously, I mean, the main really cog right now is Paul George. And if he can keep that up, it's going to keep them in the series. But like I said, still got the Suns winning. I got probably the Suns winning tonight, fast-tracking themselves to the NBA Finals. But let's move on to topic number 2. Topic number 2, the Bucks are now limping. A big injury coming out of nowhere, and this obviously happens in professional sports. And it happens a lot, but obviously happening at the wrong time for the Milwaukee Bucks with Giannis Antetokounmpo going down with a leg injury. So what do you really think the chances are now that they can beat, this Atlanta Hawks team that was already down without their star themselves and had a big night without their star? So I don't know. What do you got going on with these two stars being hurt, one for each team?
I think this certainly hurts the Bucks a lot more than it hurts the Hawks because, number one, Trey's been great. Giannis is a better player, so you're losing a better player. Number two, even with some of the injuries that the Hawks have sustained, with losing DeAndre Hunter and now Trae Young, they're a very deep team. We talked about this last week. You've got guys like John Collins who can pick up the slack, scoring. He's obviously a good rebounder. Clint Capella, very good center, knows his role, rim runner, rim protector, rebounder. Then you have guys like Kevin Huerter who can score. He had the 27 points in Game 7 of the second round. Then you also have Cam Reddish now back, who hasn't quite lived up to where he was drafted, but is still a solid player off the bench who can score. So you have guys on that team who can fill up the stat sheet. Danilo Gallinari. They have a ton of guys who can play. So, when you lose you don't want to lose Trae Young, obviously, but you have other guys that can step up and fill a role on that team to kind of make up for it. Whereas with the Bucks, even before Giannis got hurt, they were only playing maybe 7 guys. When they haven't been playing Bobby Portis a lot. Pat Connaughton hasn't quite played great for the Bucks team, despite being from Arlington, Massachusetts. So it's really just been Giannis, Drew Holiday, Middleton, Lopez, and the other starter is escaping me for the Bucks right now. I don't know why I can't think of it.
Drew Holiday.
They are very solid at the top. They're a top-heavy team. But when one of those top pieces falls, they're going to struggle. So from what I understand, Giannis hyperextended his knee, so he's probably going to come back. I don't think he'll play in Game 5, but I think he might be back for Game 6. We'll see how it goes. It looked like he really sprained his ankle at first, but believe it or not, a severely sprained ankle isn't as bad as a hyperextended knee. So we'll see if that's the case. Who knows, though, with these injuries? We are still waiting for Kawhi Leonard to come back. Joel Embiid came back from an injury that we thought he would never be able to come back from, and he did, and played the entire rest of the postseason once he got back. So it just depends on different guys, and sometimes the bigger guys, especially the lower leg injuries, it's tougher for them. But we'll see. We'll see if Giannis comes back. But I think the Hawks are going to take Game 5. If you're taking out the two superstars, Trae Young and Giannis, and then you've just got the rest of both teams competing against each other, I think the Hawks win that game.
Yeah, well, first off, we often don't disagree with each other, so this is going to be good for the viewers and the ratings. But I personally think Trae Young's a better player than Giannis, and I would draft him over Giannis. And I know a lot of people would rather have Giannis with his size, his speed, his athletic capability. I just have said many times that Giannis has no outside game. He's almost like a Ben Simmons, but he's not as bad as Ben Simmons, clearly. But he just clearly has to drive to the hole too much and rely on his post game a little bit more than an NBA superstar needs to. And that's the only gripe I have about Giannis. And hey, he's still developing his game. I know he's kind of had a little turnaround jumper that he's tried to add into his game this season. So he's clearly working on his development. He's still such a young guy that he can clearly develop into that all-around player. But all around right now, I think Trae Young has got everything. He's got everything you need right now. But we've talked about it on the show in the past about, and just over the past couple of weeks, I said how it's kind of like the battle of, you got the best players with the Bucks against the best team with Atlanta. And so now with the best player, one of the best players being out, I think the best team is going to even take more advantage of that and step up. I'm expecting the Hawks to kind of win the next game and put a grip on the series. And if Trae Young can come back, I'm definitely expecting a win. Because like I said, I don't expect Giannis to play in the next game. And it's really one of those things, I think if you're the Bucks, you've got to be thinking, can we get it to 7 games right now so we can get a little rest for our superstar and bring him back into the fold to kind of have a chance to win this game, win this series in 7. Because it's just really one of those things where he's not going to be available. It doesn't look like. He was down on the floor a long time And that looked like it was a very painful injury where he was holding his lower leg injury. So I know they're saying it's not super serious, but it's one of those things where I think it's going to take him a little bit of time. And is he going to have the confidence on it too when he comes back to kind of play at his game, which is obviously slashing, dynamic, attacking the hoop, and really, trying to dunk on people and be aggressive down low. So we'll see if he's still going to be the same player coming back off of that injury. But right now, like we said, is Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, are they going to be enough with being the other two superstars on that team to be able to step up? And I don't know right now. I've got to go with the Hawks right now, especially if Trae Young can come back off of his ankle injury. So I honestly want to see the Atlanta Hawks versus the Phoenix Suns for the NBA Finals, still picking the Phoenix Suns to win it all.
Yeah, I think that'll be an interesting matchup. Right now, I think the Hawks are in a better position in the Eastern Conference Finals, as we just mentioned. We'll see what Giannis's injury status is later on in the series, but time is wasted here for both those teams. But I think one of the most important things out of those two series too is how these coaches are going to adjust to these injuries and the lineups they're going to adjust to. And that's going to be big in these last couple of games. So moving on to topic number 3, some more coaches have been hired now in the NBA. Just over the past week, we talked a lot about the Celtics last week, but we didn't get too much into Ime Udoka, the brand new head coach for the Celtics, but also Jason Kidd, now the head coach of the Dallas Mavericks. You got the former Mavericks coach Rick Carlisle heading over to the Pacers, and then Chauncey Billups was hired by the Portland Trail Blazers. So, Brandon, we're Celtics fans. We obviously, probably like Udoka. I actually like him a lot. I think it was a good hire, despite me not knowing who the heck he was. Reading into him, I really like it. But out of those 4, who's your favorite hire and for which team, and who do you think is the best fit there?
Man, that's a great question. Honestly, let's hold off on that answer real quick. But because I don't know, I got to think about that. Because like you said, who's your favorite out of that 4? Because honestly, I think all 4 teams got themselves great hires and great matches. And I think you've got to bring in the right coach for your roster and for your program to be able to accelerate. And I think these 4 teams just did that with their 4 brand new coaching hires. So let's start off with the Celtics first, obviously with us being from Boston. So Ime Udoka. So we just talked about how every NBA team has to have a role player. That's what Ime Udoka was when he played in the NBA. He was that role player guy that would come in, play some great defense, grab a couple rebounds, and chip in a few points, and then he'd go back to the bench. But then he'd come in at a clutch moment. So he played, I believe, 8 or 9 years in the NBA. We wanted a former player. We got one now. Obviously, we were kind of rooting for Chauncey Billups to get the job, but we said we wanted a former player to come in, and guess what? Udoka is a former player. So he's really one of those former role players that's going to come in, so he's going to know how to handle those role players. But on top of that, he's coached under the likes of, like we said, Greg Popovich, and has learned under one of the best coaches in NBA history. On top of that, he's coached on the United States national team and has coached guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown before. He said that he's going to come in and he's going to get the best out of them, and I think that's exactly what this franchise needs right now. So I think the Boston Celtics hiring Ime Udoka was a huge hiring. I think it's going to pay off great dividends, and we talked about, hey, what is Brad Stevens going to do, and how his first few moves have been excellent so far, honestly, clearing us $32 million in cap space by trading Kemba Walker, and then now hiring a great coach that fits the system, fits the roster, fits the city. And he's one of those young coaches that I think is hungry and is going to be, working hard to prove everybody that he deserves the job and to drive this franchise to the top. So I think that was a great hiring. I think the Dallas Mavericks bringing back one of their former players, Jason Kidd, I think was a great matchup. We said we didn't want Jason Kidd here. We did not want Jason Kidd. Out of all 4 coaches, I think he's the worst of the 4 that we're talking about. So we didn't want him here. But guess what? The Dallas Mavericks thought, hey, perfect fit, former player here, had some of his best years here in Dallas, right, as a player. So for him to come back and, maybe relive that glory now as a coach and get this Dallas team going. And now the question is, can you get your superstar signed to a max contract with Luka Doncic to want to stay in Dallas now with the new coach? So that's the new question we'll be watching over the next couple of weeks. But then obviously Chauncey Billups going to the Portland Trail Blazers. I think that's a great move. And it's honestly, if I'm looking to keep Dame Lillard, I think it's a great move here, being like, look, Dame, we've got one of the hottest commodities in the coaching world now as our head coach, and Chauncey Billups, a former player, big shot Billups himself, and you're a big shot player yourself. Dame time, baby. Dame time. Started off the show with a Dame time. Got to get a Dame time in there. And so it's just really one of those things. And then last but not least, Rick Carlisle. When I saw Rick Carlisle left the Dallas Mavericks, I said he might even be a chance to be the Celtics head coach, being a former Celtics player, which you pointed out to me in a text. I thought that was a huge, great tie, but a former player himself. And then he's had an unbelievable NBA coaching experience. So I thought he might have a chance of getting that Celtics job. But, hey, he goes back to the Pacers and now has a chance of building up a great team there in Indiana, obviously a state that loves basketball. So once again, I think all four teams really paid off here and got the great coach that they needed and wanted for their franchises.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I think each team, that was probably 4 home runs. I mean, time will tell how good it was. Just quick on Udoka, I saw his press conference and I'm like, I really like this guy. I like what the Celtics did here. They didn't go for a splash. They went for the right guy. You know, he's coached 3 of the top players on the Celtics in Smart, Tatum, and Brown, like you mentioned. But also in the press conference, somebody asked him about those 3 guys, and he said, I love coaching them in FIBA, but he said, I'm going to be on their ass. And he's talking about the top players on the team, which I love that too. And he even said in the press conference, he turned to Brad Stevens and said, one of the things I want to change, sorry, Coach Stevens, but the Celtics were 27th in the league in assists last year. I want that to change. So he didn't have any problems sitting next to his boss, who is now Brad Stevens in basketball operations, and saying, I didn't like that when you were coaching this team last year, they were 27th in assists. Not saying it was Stevens' fault necessarily, but just saying that was a problem last year. We're going to fix that this year. But he's not brash. He's not like in it for himself. He loves the game of basketball. He's coached under some great coaches. So I think this is a great hire by the Celtics. I'm not going to get into every coach, but Jason Kidd, who I don't like as a coach, I thought it was the right hire for the Mavs, because the thing they have to figure out, like you said, they want Luka to sign the max. But Luka, as great as he is, I think Luka's already a top 10 player. He's so brilliant offensively. I think he's going to get better defensively because of his size and getting a little bit better shape. That would certainly help. But Luka kind of needs to be knocked down a peg a little bit. He's already calling the shots with the Mavericks right now, and I know he's an unbelievable talent, and he's already played with men before he even got to the NBA because he played over in Europe. But he needs to kind of be knocked down a peg. And when you have another guy who is probably a borderline Hall of Famer, and Jason Kidd, actually everybody gets the Hall of Fame in the NBA, so he's getting it. So, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He was drafted by the Mavericks, went back to the Mavericks, is a, well-established player, and was a point guard who was one of the best distributors ever in the history of the NBA, to, coaching a guy who is a great scorer, but when he's at his best, he's scoring, but he's also making unbelievable plays passing the ball. I think that was a great hire by the Mavericks. So I think that was really smart by them. Carlisle in Indiana, I think, is good too, because they're not going to win by getting a bunch of superstars. The Pacers cannot attract superstars. They just can't. They're not in the market for that. That's not what they're all about. So they need a tactician like a Rick Carlisle to really get the most out of the team that they have, out of the talent they acquire. So I think that was a good hire as well. So, but I think all 4 teams hit a home run there. I think all 4 hires made sense, just like you said. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see how these coaches do next year.
So you're telling me free agents don't want to go to Indianapolis instead of LA or Atlanta, or I agree.
Maybe just a little bit, yeah. I think they like LA, Miami, Dallas with no in-state taxes, just a little bit more than Indianapolis.
I agree.
Yes.
I agree. They have a tough draw pulling in top free agents there, at that location. And then obviously, hey, you got Luka rocking the dad bod, man. So it's really one of those things where I think Luka still has some of the baby fat on him, obviously, because he's still such a young superstar. I would like to see Luka increase his first step speed and first step acceleration. I think if he gets a little faster, he could obviously go from being a top 10 player to being a top 5 player, and maybe even putting himself in the like of being arguably the best player in the NBA because he has such a good all-around game, like you said. So I'm really looking to see what he does, and clearly looking to see if he signs that max extension, which will be worth big money, not Lionel Messi money, but big money in itself. So let's move on to the hometown topic. Topic number 4, the Red Sox getting hot at the right time. Loved seeing them beat up on the Yankees. And obviously with Chris Sale now coming back and, hopefully over the next month or two, man, we're getting a weapon back. So, yeah, the Red Sox are looking good right now, huh?
Yeah, most definitely. It's the second time this season that the Red Sox have swept the Yankees over the weekend. And we've seen seasons in the past where the Red Sox have been great at the beginning of the season and the Yankees have struggled. And then those two things have flipped later on in the year. The Red Sox struggle and the Yankees end up going on a winning streak and make the postseason, and vice versa as well. So things can change quickly, especially if either team makes a deal at the deadline. The Yankees are, I think, 6 games back of first place. So they're not, completely out of reach of the division, but they don't look good right now. And you look at, Garrett Cole is now a mess because of the whole, all the checking for foreign substances now seems to screw with his head. He might not have even been doing it, but it's just screwing with his head. So You're seeing that with a lot of different pitchers right now. Seeing it with Garrett Richards with the Red Sox too. So, the one guy that they were counting on this year to just produce at his position, Garrett Cole, he's not doing it right now because they paid all this money for him to go to the Yankees, and he's not that lock that they thought he was going to be coming into the season. Aaron Judge had a home run, I think, on Sunday against the Red Sox, but he hasn't had the season he is used to. And same thing with Giancarlo Stanton. They haven't been bad, but they're not where they want to be. So the Yankees just don't look right now. And the Red Sox, their lineup has been awesome. Xander Bogaerts is so consistent. JD Martinez lately hasn't been hitting for as much power, but it's hitting. He's driving the ball. He's going opposite field. JD's been fine. His average is up. He's gonna hit for power again. And Rafael Devers all of a sudden is hammering the ball. So, with those 3 guys in the middle of the lineup, you still got Verdugo, who cooled off after having a good start to the season. Love watching Verdugo, though. He'll heat up again. Kike Hernandez is heating up. Hunter Renfroe's been hitting bombs lately. And then Bobby Dahlbeck, who's really just a power hitter. He's kind of a swing and miss, slugger, but he's hitting bombs too. The Red Sox, I think, have the most home runs of any team in Major League Baseball right now. If they're not one, they're in the top 3. And that's how they've been winning these games. I don't know how long that you can sustain that part of it, but they have such a good lineup. They can hit in a bunch of different ways that I think they're going to be very successful throughout the season. And you're seeing the difference between the Red Sox and the Yankees right now, especially when the Yankees don't have that edge in the starting pitching. When Cole was at his best, they had the edge because the Red Sox starting pitching this year hasn't been great. Evaldi's solid. Erod's just he pitched well against the Yankees, but he's not, I don't think he's the top 3 starter. So you don't necessarily, I mentioned Richards just really struggling as of late. So they don't have the starting pitching that most of the top teams have, but their lineup's so good. Bullpen's been really good. Still, they probably need another arm in the bullpen. We'll figure that out later on in the year, but they just look so much better than the Yankees right now. And I hate to say that as a Red Sox fan and jinx myself, but they look very good against the team from New York.
No, continue to say that. They look very good against the Yankees, and I love hearing that, man. Anytime they sweep the Yankees, we're loving hearing that in Boston here. Honestly, one of the greatest rivalries in sports between 2 cities is Boston and New York. I've always said that. I'll continue to say that. But with this Red Sox team, I have really enjoyed watching Alex Verdugo and Kike Hernandez, two guys that honestly love saying their names too. It's just really one of those things where I'd love to be an announcer saying Kike Hernandez taking the bat next up to bat. So it's just really one of those things where when they've got some great players on their roster right now and they're playing really well together and they're playing good at the right time. But like you said, long season, still a long time to go before we get to playoff baseball in September. So I really want to see them continue this and carry this momentum throughout the summer. But right now, we're really enjoying what this Boston Red Sox team is doing. And hey, man, you brought it up with the pitchers right now. And if I'm an MLB pitcher, I've just got to be expecting them to be checking me in between every inning at this point now. You mentally have to put that into your game now, that they're going to be checking for these substances all the time. And especially if you go ahead and maybe strike out the side, they're going to want to take a look at your glove or, hey, maybe even your belt. So just have that in your mind. After I struck out a couple of guys, I'd be taking my glove off and walking over to them, being like, I'm going to come show you at this point, especially if I'm a clean player. And obviously, baseball's had that history of illegal substances before. They're trying to crack down on it. So, hey, this is a good time to do it. But if I'm a pitcher right now, I've got to be prepared for that and willing to accept it at this point and just prepare myself mentally and go out and still play my game.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's not going to change. You know, they're not going to limit it to a certain amount of times. If the umps think that you're using one of those banned substances, they're going to check. So, you know, until they come, the union maybe will come up with something in the offseason about how they're going to go about, you know, checking for that. Because I do think some pitchers aren't doing anything wrong, but their whole routine, you know, baseball players are such creatures of habit. I think some of those pitchers are just, you know, their routine's messed up, so they're upset. You know, it's like when Chris Sale cut up those uniforms in Chicago a few years ago before he came over to the Red Sox because he was upset that his uniform didn't fit right because it was too baggy because it was those old school Chicago White Sox uniforms. So, you know, they're just creatures of habit. We'll see. But like you said, they've got to adjust to these new rules because every pitcher is going to have to deal with it as the season goes along. One player who dealt with it pretty well is the subject of our next topic, and that is topic number 5, Shohei Ohtani. You know, we just want to talk a little bit about Shohei. You know, I think some folks who, you know, have seen that he's, you know, an MVP candidate so far for the Angels, they probably don't know too much about him other than the fact that he hits bombs and he's also a good pitcher. So, Brandon, by all means, go ahead and let the folks know a little bit about Shohei Ohtani. We're certainly going to talk about him a lot this season.
Well, first off, if you're new to our show here, give us a subscribe, give us a like, hey, give us a call into the show. Follow us on Twitter. I am still waiting for my first Japanese follower on Twitter. And hey, man, I will interact with you as soon as you follow me. I'm looking forward to that. But hey, give us a subscribe, especially. Give us a subscribe on this show so we can keep delivering you excellent content going forward and keep making it better. But Shohei is one of those guys where, man, he just delivers the content for you, makes it easy to be able to do, easy to talk about. I mean, this guy is a superstar, the young Japanese superstar of Shohei Ohtani, a guy that we could just watch for days and days. But, man, let's go back to his history in Japan. He was signed, you know, like most young baseball superstars are, signed just as a teenager, 17 years old when he entered the Japanese Super League there of baseball. And he obviously became a star just instantaneously, just immediately because of his superstar movie-like superstar looks. First off, like we always said, he's built like an Adonis or like an Olympian, right? Just built like the baseball player that, you know, we haven't seen in ages. And then obviously he's just a well-rounded player overall, not only in the batting box, but on the pitching mound, in the outfield. The guy can do it all. But like we said, signed as a young teenager, 17 years old when he signed his first contract in Japan for the Fighters. And then after that, going on to, you know, have a great career, a short career in Japan, but a great career there before he quickly got noticed by Major League Baseball teams, obviously, for putting up big numbers in the Japanese league and for hitting bombs over there. And obviously the Japanese fans, this is nothing new to them. I think they knew quickly that he was going to be coming over to Major League Baseball, and they love that, obviously, having their superstar come over and dominate Major League Baseball, like we've said, kind of like in the past, like an Ichiro Suzuki. So this is just, once again, the same thing again. And obviously, as an American fan, I love seeing it too. We need this in baseball. We need this in America, these international superstars in baseball. I think baseball is one of those sports that's always been known for international stars. And this guy right now is the man. He is the biggest and brightest star on the map, shining bright right now. And honestly, like I said, for these Japanese fans, it's nothing new. They got to see him tear it up in the Japanese league, prepared himself for a great major league career, and has kind of just honed his skills over there as a young teenager. And then now he comes over here into Major League Baseball in his young 20s, still, you can't even really say, not even in his prime yet. And he's the Major League Baseball leading vote getter for MVP. Well-deserved right now, because he's just tearing it up in the batter's box and on the field. So, man, I love Shohei Ohtani, really bringing the eyes to baseball. I really love watching every second of this guy. And he's got such a great personality, too. He's one of those guys that's always smiling, always fun to watch. So, great on the field, great off the field. And that's what you need to be when you're a superstar. And the young Japanese superstar, Shohei Ohtani, is the man right now.
Yeah, he is so much fun to watch. Just few more little nuggets on him. You mentioned his career in Japan. We forget when a lot of these players come over to Major League Baseball in America, they have a history of success in their other countries, especially the Japanese players. Ichiro is like that.
Yep.
Hideki Matsui. All these guys, they had phenomenal careers over there. They're Hall of Famers over there. They come over here, and they're so good over here that they could be possibly Hall of Famers. But just talking about Ohtani, he was a 5-time All-Star in the Japanese League. He was the Pacific League MVP back in 2016. That same season, his team, the Nippon Ham Fighters, won the Japanese Series Championship back in 2016 as well. And then he comes over to America at Major League Baseball, 2018. He's the AL Rookie of the Year. He's just been awesome. And then this year, just going over his stats, pitching. First of all, he's a great hitter, and he's pitching really well. He's 3-1 right now for his record. He's got a 2.58 ERA as a pitcher for the Angels, 82 strikeouts for the Angels right now. And he's at the plate, he's hitting 278, 28 homers, 63 RBIs. He's got 11 steals, so he's showing off some speed as well. His OPS is well over 1,000. So right now, Shohei is just on fire. I'm looking forward to seeing him in the All-Star game. That's when sometimes guys who in Major League Baseball who are producing well, but maybe not everybody has seen them, especially on the West Coast, because us folks on the East Coast, we're just not watching 10 o'clock West Coast baseball games. But you see those players in the All-Star game. I'm hoping he's going to be in the home run derby. I would imagine he is. And he's going to put on a show, I got to think, especially up in Colorado with the thin air. It's just going to be a blast to see Shohei in that. And I think that's when a lot of people are really going to take notice of Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, I mean, if they haven't taken notice yet, they need to. They need to open those eyes, because this guy is the future of baseball. And kind of like how we talked about, Luka Doncic, a young international superstar coming over to the NBA and kind of, still growing up. Shohei Ohtani is that guy for Major League Baseball right now, that young international superstar that's coming over to America, is still developing, not even in his prime yet, is still growing up here in America, and has already put himself on the map as the best player in Major League Baseball, in my opinion. And I know maybe Mike Trout, his teammate, and a couple other guys don't want to hear that, but honestly, right now, it's the truth. Everybody's talking about Shohei Ohtani, and they're talking about him for a reason. And obviously, like you said, this guy hits for power, and he has a high on-base percentage. And, man, when you're a hitter, that's exactly what you want. Then he steps on the mound, has a 2.78 ERA, I believe, and he's striking out hitters left and right. He's striking out your best hitter, and then he's stepping in the box as the best hitter. This guy is dangerous on the pitcher's mound, dangerous in the batting box. And it's one of those things where obviously we've seen him recently hit 6 home runs over 6 games. It's one of those things where you just like, hey, what is he going to do next? And I keep saying it, more Ohtani, give me more Ohtani, because this guy's the man. But what is he going to do next? He's still got some great things left to do. But, man, I don't know. Can he surprise us any more with his play? Because he's just doing it all right now as Major League Baseball superstar and the young Japanese superstar that he is. He's carrying the game of baseball right now, and it's really good to see. And, man, we will continue to cover Shohei Ohtani on this show because we love him so much. But moving on to another young Japanese superstar, let's move on to Yuki Tsunoda, the young Japanese superstar in F1. His rookie year right now for the AlphaTauri F1 team. And honestly, he's had some good showings. He's had some bad showings. It's kind of been a 50-50 year so far right now. But with this kid being backed by obviously the great F1 fans in Japan and the power of Honda, and obviously he's in the Red Bull Junior program, Yuki Tsunoda is really one of those up-and-coming rising stars of F1 right now.
Yeah, he reminds you of a lot of the other young F1 stars who have come through over the past few years. Really doing well in F2. Last year, he had 3 wins, I believe, in F2 in 2020. Has really performed well over the past couple of seasons. Comes up to F1 this year, and when you first come up to F1, you're not gonna dominate. You're not gonna, especially with the way that Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton and Red Bull and Mercedes are doing right now. There's no way you're gonna crack the top 5, and even McLaren's has been doing great this year too. So you're not gonna get in as a young driver at 21 without a lot of experience in F1. You're probably not going to crack the top 5 or get a podium very often, if at all. So, but the way that he's been performing so far this year, you can tell he belongs. He's not just this kind of fish out of water coming up to F1. His best finish was 7th at Baku. I know he was actually disappointed in his 7th place finish by some of the guys in the way that they passed him at Baku. But, that's certainly a very impressive top 10 finish for a guy like that who's just getting his feet wet in F1. He's got, I think, 9 points so far this season. So I think he's in like 14th place, which is probably what you can expect for the amount of experience that he has. I think he's only been in 8 races. So, this is about what you would see from a first-year F1 driver like him. And I think the sky's the limit for this guy. He looks like he's going to be one of those next superstars in F1 racing. And it's going to be interesting to see, once he gets good, which car he's going to go to, because he's not going to stay where he is for very long if he keeps being successful.
Yeah, no, you bring up a good point of where his future lies, and he's going to have plenty of options, especially, like I said, if Honda keeps backing him with the power that they're doing right now, he'll have plenty of options, especially within the Red Bull program. But I think he's had a kind of a mixed bag season. Like you said, if we're comparing him, being that he is only a rookie, but, F1 is, the 20 best drivers in the world. So we have to compare them to the other guys. But like you said, he's kind of midfield right now. And that's exactly where they want their car to be. It's a midfield car. He's done a great job, I think, racing that car in the midfield. And at times he has outraced his teammate, Pierre Gasly, even though Pierre Gasly has gotten the best of him this season, outqualified him, has outraced him. And is clearly, Pierre Gasly's put himself back in the situation where he might have a chance to go back to Red Bull in the future. I mean, the guy's been all over top 10s this year. P6 has pretty much been his spot all year long for Pierre Gasly. So he's got himself a big, measuring point against in his teammate, Pierre Gasly. But Yuki Tsunoda, I think, has risen to the occasion, has shown well over the last few Grand Prix, especially. I think he's getting his feet under him. He's had some big crashes, obviously, earlier in the year at Imola. And then most recently, he had a big crash in qualifying at the French Grand Prix that put him to the back of the grid. But he went on to have a great Sunday and raced well and is putting himself up there and has some great overtakes, especially one against Fernando Alonso, who is honestly, everybody knows Fernando's an F1 legend back on the grid for the Alpine F1 team. But, man, I think Yuki Tsunoda, like you said, having some measuring points against Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, and his teammate Pierre Gasly, man, there are so many great drivers on the grid that he's competing against the best week in and week out. So he's got to bring his best. And he has started to really piece it together over these last few Grand Prix. You brought up his P7 finish at Baku. Then most recently at the Styrian Grand Prix in Austria, he managed to bring home the car P10. And that was after he received a grid penalty for blocking Valtteri Bottas during qualifying. And he said, I deserve the penalty and I'm just going to move on and have a good Sunday drive. And that's exactly what he did. And he drove himself up into the position of points into P10. So I think right now, this young up-and-coming superstar in F1 is having a great rookie year right now, and he's really putting himself on the map. But there's plenty of options ahead for this guy, whether he wants to stay in AlphaTauri for a few years. But there's honestly been some talk of him already being that future replacement to replace possibly Sergio Perez in the future in the Red Bull seat to match up against Max Verstappen. And man, that would be amazing. You have the young Japanese superstar, and then you have the young Dutch superstar in Max Verstappen. So, Red Bull has a lot of great options right now, whether they want to go ahead and bring back Pierre Gasly, who has been in prime form right now, or whether they want to look to the future with a young Japanese superstar of Yuki Tsunoda. So if I'm Yuki Tsunoda right now, I just keep it up right now. I keep plowing ahead. I keep my head down, keep looking to chip away some points. And, I keep my relationship strong with Honda, which we all know that's going to keep going. But quickly, before I hand it off to you, one of the funny things that Yuki brought up in the paddock is he said the best thing he loves about being an F1 driver is obviously the travel, but on top of the travel, he loves the food. This kid loves eating food. He loves eating food in the paddock. He said he gets his Italian food in the AlphaTauri paddock, and then he goes over to the Red Bull paddock and gets his international food with a little bit of Japanese food with some sushi and some Mexican food, because obviously they got Sergio Perez over there now too. So I think one of the biggest things for this young superstar is enjoying the food and enjoying the life of an F1 driver. But man, this is a guy to watch out for in the future. And I think he's really starting to piece it together right now in F1.
Yeah, he seems like a fun guy, and a guy that a lot of people are going to be attracted to once he becomes even more successful in F1. I hope he doesn't eat his way out of F1 racing like some guys eat their way out of the NBA. I don't think that'll happen, but that's a cool story to think about. And, racing for Red Bull like that, I mean, they've been unbelievable this year. We're going to move on to our next topic, and that's topic number 7. Is that Red Bull has won 4 in a row now. They won the most recent F1 race, and they seem to be, they're changing of the guard here with Red Bull and Mercedes. Is Red Bull really now? I mean, they've always been, at the top of the standings. They've always been, competing against each other, but it's been Mercedes that has been dominant over the past decade. Is Red Bull now kind of surpassing Mercedes in that aura of the top F1 racing team?
Man, it's such a tough question. And, I'm not going to hide any fact that I'm a Mercedes super fan. And my second favorite team is McLaren, who also runs a Mercedes engine. So it's just really one of those things where, as a Mercedes fan, you've got to be wondering a little bit, is Red Bull, finally got themselves in a position to win a championship? And I think the answer is yes. And I think they've clearly shown that over this stretch of the last 4 Grand Prix. And I guess, I was the one who came up with this topic, and I said, is Mercedes dominance in the F1 hybrid era over? And I think the answer to that is no. Okay. So I think the answer of Red Bull having a chance to win a championship is yes, clearly. I think they're going to have a great chance to win it this year. I think Red Bull has put all their eggs in a basket to try to force their championship this year with the new regulations coming in 2022 and every team being put on their back foot and having to search for speed again. I think Red Bull's like, hey, who's going to get this last championship in this era? We want to be the guy to do it, and we want to be the team to do it. Christian Horner is pushing his team forward at an amazing pace right now, led by Max Verstappen, and Sergio Perez is doing an amazing job in that second seat. I think for years, that has been the question. I give more credit to Sergio Perez than I do Max Verstappen right now for Red Bull's success, and that's because for years, Max Verstappen has been successful. He's been the guy leading the team. He's been up there fighting Mercedes. They haven't been able to get their second car in the fight. Their second driver has always come up short. Even Pierre Gasly, when he was in the Red Bull for just, half a season, then they brought in Alex Albon and he struggled as well. But Sergio Perez has stepped up to the plate, has delivered, has even got himself a win already in the Red Bull seat. So I think he is really the biggest driving force right now, as they've got 2 amazing drivers in their cockpit right now, driving this team forward. And obviously, Max Verstappen is one of the best on the grid, and he is going to be a future champion. It might even be this year, and I hate to say that, I really do. but he is looking good right now. He's won 3 of the last 4, and Sergio Perez won that other 4th race. So Red Bull's won 4 in a row right now. Mercedes is looking for answers, but don't count out Mercedes right now. And James Allison, the leading director for Mercedes development, came out this week and said that Mercedes is going to bring more developments to their car this year. So we expect this battle to go all the way to the end, all the way to round 22. And, I guess you can give the hat tipped off to Red Bull right now. And, the scale's leaning towards Red Bull right now. But I have a feeling over these next 4 or 5 Grand Prix that Mercedes is going to try to bring themselves back into the fight and put Lewis Hamilton back into a championship contending battle. But yeah, like I said, I think the Constructors' Championship is going to the end, and I think the Drivers' Championship is going to the end. I'm still rooting for Lewis Hamilton, but right now, Max Verstappen and Red Bull are clearly leading the way. They have the best car on the grid, and he is driving the wheels off it right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Verstappen, over the past 3 years, we've seen just this meteoric rise from Max Verstappen, and I think Red Bull predicted it too. I think the point that you made about the rules change, I think, is what everybody's talking about right now too. I know Toto Wolff Mercedes came out and actually kind of hinted at the fact that they haven't been pushing the technology of the Mercedes car as much this year because of the rules changes coming up next year in 2022. So that's why they haven't been quite as successful at staving off Red Bull as they have in the past. But I think your point about the second driver for Red Bull is a huge one too, because you mentioned before how, Gasly was having a tough time a couple of years ago. They took him out of the seat, and then he became more successful once he got out of that Red Bull seat. And then you mentioned Alex Albon, who really struggled last year in 2020, that he didn't quite perform the way they were hoping he would. And finally, they get Perez in there, and he's not winning races all the time, but he's been consistent. He's been successful, and certainly finishing closer to the podium than some of those other guys who struggled to even get into the top 10. And I think that's where you're getting up to the status of Mercedes. You're not just winning races, but your second car is also getting close up there as well. And I think that's the biggest difference between the two. But like we just talked about, though, who knows if they're telling the truth over at Mercedes if they didn't try to push the technology this year, thinking about the rule changes for 2022. I think that's probably the case. I don't think Lewis Hamilton's going anywhere. I mean, he's got that like 1 year-to-year deal, year-to-year contract situation with Mercedes, but I think he's coming back. I don't see him not coming back for 2022. So I think that'll be, and then so with Mercedes knowing that Lewis Hamilton is coming back, or at least pretty sure that he is, they know they're going to have him for another season, and maybe next year is the year that they really make a push for at least 1 more or 2 more titles with Lewis Hamilton still around, because even though we love watching him, he's a legendary F1 driver. He's pushing 40. He's getting up there in age. Even though we've seen many great 40-somethings perform in their sport, it is getting to that time where you might see him either walk away or whatever in a couple of years. So they're probably trying to maybe 1 or 2 more years with these new rules might be the best way to go for Mercedes over the next couple of years, rather than just going all in this year, like you said. You think that Red Bull is doing right now.
Yeah, I'm telling you, Red Bull is investing every piece of money and time right now they have into this season to try to steal this championship away before these rule changes. And I don't blame them. I think this is really one of their best chances, because next year, when everybody's kind of put on that back foot and put on even scales, because of the new rule changes, I think it's going to be, obviously a race of development all over again. But right now, with these current generation cars, it's who's going to get this last championship. And Red Bull is really trying to put themselves in the driver's seat per se. So, hey, it's something that we'll definitely be covering and watching going on over the season. But, hey, expect that fight to go to the end, especially from Mercedes. But let's move on to topic number 8 right now. Another guy, we talked about Lionel Messi possibly signing a mega deal over these next few days. But Kyle Pitts just signed his massive rookie deal, $32 million over 4 years, fully guaranteed, which is absurd, especially for a rookie. He's got the most guaranteed money in his contract of any tight end in the league, more than Travis Kelce, more than anybody right now. $32 million guaranteed, and I think it's well worth it. Kyle Pitts is going to change the game, I think, going forward.
Yeah, I think this shows, too, that, when Atlanta drafted him at number 4 overall, highest drafted tight end ever in NFL history, you knew he wasn't being drafted just to be like a solid tight end. They knew they were drafting an offensive weapon when they got Pitts. And then, leading up to the draft, I didn't see a lot of behind the scenes with him until leading up to the draft when they do all the, follow the rookies as they get ready for the combine sort of thing. And the guy is he's a well-spoken guy. He seems like a class act. Seems very smart. He's going to be, for a non-quarterback, he's going to be the face of the franchise. It was Julio Jones for a while. He was always the guy that you thought of when you thought of the Atlanta Falcons. Now that he's gone, Pitts is going to be that guy. So I think that's why they gave him all the guaranteed money. Whenever these types of contracts are doled out, the guy who's going to get the next contract is going to be the highest paid guy because these salaries just keep going up and up. Even though with the salary cap the way it is going to go up in the next couple of years despite all the revenue they lost a year ago. But you see the next 2 contracts of the highest paid guaranteed money for tight ends in the NFL. The next 2 guys are Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, who just signed big deals with the Patriots. So, we mentioned it before with quarterbacks where at one point Kirk Cousins had this massive contract because he was just the next quarterback in free agency. It certainly wasn't the best, but he was the next quarterback in free agency, and that guy always gets the big deal. And I think you're going to see that at other positions as well, where the next guy who's either a free agent or that top rookie is going to get a massive deal because every year the salary cap goes up and up, and it's a drastic change every single season. But like I mentioned, I think this guy is one of those players that the Falcons believe is going to be just an amazing offensive weapon for them, and they're very confident that he's going to be successful despite never playing an NFL down so far in his career.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you brought up a great point. How, like you said, that next superstar kind of sets the market, and it will continue to happen like that as long as the dollar signs keep going up in professional sports. I think that'll keep happening, where the next guy that's great at the next position will be the guy that sets the market for everybody going forward. And Kyle Pitts has just done it again with $32 million guaranteed over his first 4 years without having even stepped on the field yet, like you said. So I think that's huge, but I think it's the right move for this Atlanta Falcons team, considering they just traded away their big ticket superstar and Julio Jones. I think their next big superstar is Kyle Pitts, and you want to make him happy. You want to make him happy early. So you want to keep him in Atlanta for the duration of his career, at least over the next 10 years, I'd say, especially for, the money that they've invested in him over these first 4 years, but on top of having that, first draft pick spent on him as well. So it's really one of those things where I think this is the right move for the Atlanta Falcons, securing him and locking him up over these 4 years and keeping him happy. But I was just so shocked. Like you said, more guaranteed money than Jonnu Smith, more guaranteed money than Hunter Henry, more guaranteed money than Travis Kelce, the most guaranteed money for any tight end in the league right now. And the guy hasn't even stepped on the field right now. But like I said, he is a game-changing player. You can line him up outside. You can line him up inside. He can put his hand in the dirt. I think he's going to get bigger, faster, stronger in the NFL weight room, and he's going to turn into a better blocker, which I think people are not giving him credit for. I think this guy is an all-around player, and I think the Atlanta Falcons are just saying, hey, we've got to lock up our superstar and keep him happy early, and I think this was the right move for the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, no question. And, we'll see, if he turns into a traditional tight end or if they do use him more as almost a big receiver. I think it kind of doesn't matter either way. He's actually a better blocker than people have been giving him credit for. So I think he'll play a lot of tight end, but they'll move him around a lot, especially in that dome in Atlanta. So he's going to be a lot of fun to watch. But moving on to our next topic, topic number 9 is Serena Surrenders. We hate to see superstars have to bow out of tournaments, especially in the individual sports, because they have to retire for the rest of the tournament. And especially somebody like Serena Williams, she got hurt the other night against, actually, I can't remember who she was playing against in Wimbledon, but she clearly hurt I think she slipped on the grass, which happens at Wimbledon, especially when it gets wet. It was raining a little bit, I think, in England, and the grass got wet. She was going for shots. She slipped, and it's just tough to see. Serena's 39 years old. Hard to believe because she's been so good for so long. Certainly doesn't look 39. She looks a lot younger than that, but phenomenal athlete. I think Serena Williams is the greatest tennis player ever. I know there's always a debate, is it her? Is it Federer? Is it Nadal? I think it's Serena. She's dominated the women's side of tennis for so long. You do have to wonder. She's now had to leave tournaments a few times over the past couple of years, and also she had a baby, so that changes things as well. But she's had to leave some tournaments over the last couple of years. So, Brandon, do you think this is the end of Serena Williams' career? Do you think that we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel for Serena Williams' tennis career?
I certainly don't think it's the end, but I think it's, it's the part where we're going downhill and not uphill anymore. But it's definitely not the end. I think she's still got a lot left in the tank, and I think she's still going to go ahead and win another major. But I think it's really one of those things. I put her in the same category as Tiger Woods. The greatest of all time, just kind of battling through some injuries and needing to get healthy before they can kind of put themselves back, on the map as the greatest of all time. I have to agree with you. I think she is the greatest tennis player of all time, male or female. She's had such a dominant run here, and that's why I compare her to Tiger as being one of the greatest of all time. And shoot, you can just put her up there as one of the greatest athletes of all time. And so I just think it's definitely not over. It's definitely not over. I think she's just a little beat up right now. I would like her to just take a bunch of time off right now, kind of like Tiger Woods is doing and having to do right now. Heal up to 100%, get yourself right physically and mentally, and then come back and perform on the highest stage like we all know that she can do again. Because I think she's still got a lot left in the tank, a lot of power still left in those powerful legs and powerful arms. And like I said, I don't want to see this be the end. I think it's just really one of those things where you're seeing a great player battling through some injuries, and it's just another chapter in the book of one of the legends of tennis. But yeah, she's still got a lot left in the tank. Do not count her out. She's got the mindset of like a Kobe Bryant, to be honest. So it's like you got, look at those people. I've just put her in the same category as Kobe Bryant, Tiger Woods. She's one of the greatest athletes of all time. So I think she's still got a lot left in the tank, like a Tom Brady, so there's another one that we can put her in a category with. And those are some great people to be compared to. And maybe we should say they can be compared to her because she's been so dominant in her sport. But I love Serena Williams, and I'm expecting to see her bounce back and recover from this injury. And she's still got a lot of great playing days left in her career.
Yeah, she's certainly no stranger to having to rehab or recover from an injury and then get back to the top of the mountain like she always has. I wonder if she's going to have to take a little bit longer of a break between now and the next one. We saw Naomi Osaka take time off and not even come to Wimbledon because of mental health issues. And you wonder if this kind of, even though Serena is so strong just across the board with everything that's happened to her in her career, physically and mentally, do you wonder maybe she takes a little bit of time off too, mentally because of, her having a child a couple of years ago and still trying to come back and win tournaments and, everything that happened with the pandemic and, she is getting older in her career. Maybe it'll take her a little bit longer to rehab to get back. Maybe she does take some time to kind of take a step back, reflect, and then come back even stronger on the tennis court. I think you're right. I don't think she's going anywhere, at least for the next couple of years. And she's always been the one that's wanted to push the envelope. She always wanted to be the one that said, I'm going to go have a baby and then come back and win a Grand Slam. And she got emotional when she was talking about it the first time she did it. So she's always trying to kind of set the bar higher for not just women's tennis players, but for tennis players in general. So I think she's going to continue to do that. She's going to play into her 40s. and she's going to try to win more Grand Slams. I think that's just what she's programmed to do. So, like you said, I don't think this is the end for Serena. And like I said, it might take a little bit longer for her to come back, but I don't think it's the end for her. I think she's still got a lot left in the tank.
We just talked about how, these next great NFL players of their position kind of set the market. Serena Williams has set the market in women's professional tennis for the last 2 decades. You could honestly just say in professional tennis in general, with all of her endorsements and the deals that she signs. And, she's just a sponsorship king, or I should say sponsorship queen. And yeah, she's still got a lot left in the tank. And, I've got this saying of there's only so many goats in the barn, but, Serena's one of them. So, I mean, she's one of the greatest of all times. And like you said, probably greatest tennis player of all time. And there's a lot of them. There's been a lot of them over the years, but she's the best, I think. But let's move on to, honestly, somebody that's trying to put themselves in the GOAT status and trying to do it at a young age. And that's Sydney McLaughlin, running a 400-meter world record at the United States Trials. And, man, I was not expecting her to do this, and she came out of nowhere, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what she can do in Tokyo now.
Yeah, Sydney McLaughlin, like you mentioned, I think she ran 51.8, I think was her official time. Might have to get corrected on that, but just sort of blazing hurdle speed from 400 meters. I know that, I forget the name of her fellow U.S. Teammate, essentially, as a 400-meter hurdler herself. They have kind of gone back and forth over the past couple of years in different world races, reaching that record-breaking time. And then all of a sudden, she does this in the Olympic trials, Sydney does, and goes under 52 seconds, which is a huge mark. So, last week we talked about a sprinter and how she's going to be a great sort of character for the Olympics. The Olympics always needs athletes that play or compete in these sports that we don't see as much of as the NBA players or the NHL players in the Winter Olympics. We only see them once every 4 years, really, unless you pay attention to some of the world championships and things like that. So when we see these types of records broken, everybody's now going to know who Sydney McLaughlin is, right? So when we go to the Olympics and you hear that's the 400-meter hurdles, people are going to be like, I want to watch Sydney McLaughlin. She was the one who ran the sub 52-second 400-meter hurdles. I want to see if she can, beat that time or get another world record. What's she going to do for a USA in track and field in the Olympics? What's she going to do in Tokyo? We need these kinds of characters in track and field and some of the other sports to really draw the interest into the Olympics in Tokyo, especially, having a year off. The Olympics got delayed a year because of the pandemic. So we have to kind of the Olympics needs to get everybody's attention back on the Olympics again. Once it was kind of, postponed last season for 2020, I think it kind of just left the minds of everybody. And now we have some of these characters from the United States who have done some great things in the trials. This is going to help the USA over in Tokyo at the Olympics a great deal. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch her and several others who are doing a lot of these great things at the Olympic trials.
Yeah, man, I love Sydney McLaughlin. I've always been a huge fan of hers. I was watching her when she was running in high school, and even at that young age, she was already starting to put herself on the track and field world map and had, people trying to sponsor her like Nike, like Gatorade. And so that was in high school, and she was really one of the high school athletes of the year. I believe the Gatorade Player of the Year, track and field as well. And then she comes on to the world stage as a professional, and she just continues her dominance. She's one of the best track and field athletes out there, male or female, and she's still at a young, tender age, is still developing. And I think this is a big moment for her where she can just tell her critics to shut up. Because not only is it, she's been a model too. She's extremely beautiful. So not only does she do track and field, she does some modeling as well. And she's taken some criticism for that in the past, that maybe she was focusing too much on being a model and not an athlete. And she said, hey, look, I can do both. I'm powerful enough to do both. I'm talented enough to do both. And I agree. She is, man. People just need to shut up. And this is a reason to say, hey, look, she is talented enough to do both. She can be a model on Wednesday, and then on Saturday, she can go and break the world record in the 400-meter hurdle. She's that talented overall. So I love seeing this. Like I said, I've always been a fan of hers. If I'm USA Track and Field, I'm making her my poster girl, putting her all over the map. And between her and Sha'Carri Richardson, they should be the ones with the American flag coming out in the opening ceremonies. You got Sha'Carri Richardson with all of her flair, and then you got the new world record holder strutting her stuff saying, hey, I'm about to come and collect a gold medal. So I think those should be the two that carry out the flag in the opening ceremony. But obviously I won't get what I want. I never do. But it's just really one of those things where those are the two that I would pick, honestly, along with Dame time, Dame Lillard. Put Dame Lillard on the flag ceremony too for USA men's basketball. But yeah, Sydney McLaughlin is an unbelievable young superstar on the track and field world. And honestly, she's been a role model for young women in the sport for a long time now. Like I said, since she's been coming out of high school, she's one of those athletes that says everything right, does everything right, is a great role model off the track, does everything right on the track, and then now goes out and wins and puts herself on the world map with a world record. So like I said, I've always been a big fan of Sydney McLaughlin. If you're new to watching her, just like if you're new to watching us on Comeback Sports, give us a subscribe here, give us a like. But hey, watch Sydney McLaughlin in the Summer Olympics because she's going to be another great chance for the United States to bring home a gold medal.
Oh, no question. No question. She's going to be she just seems like she's ready to become an Olympic superstar, just by, obviously putting up this time. But you mentioned, her popularity is going to grow. And you mentioned Sha'Carri Richardson, who we talked about last week, and how, there's going to be more eyes on USA Track and Field during the Olympics because of this. We've been waiting for more than a year now for the Olympics to come back. And I think these types of scenarios, these types of stories, these types of characters are really going to draw eyeballs to the Olympics this year. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch when the Olympics get going later on. Olympics start in September, right? It's because it's in Tokyo. It's a little bit later this time around. I can't remember the exact date that the Olympics are going to get going, but it's later on in the summer at the earliest. But can't come soon enough after what happened last year. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, folks, that's it for our 10 sports topics this week on Comeback Sports. Once again, I am Pat the Shot Caller Flaherty, and I was joined, as always, by my partner, Brandon the Coach Perry. Folks, both of our Twitter handles are at the bottom of the screen. Make sure you check those out. You also see that phone number at the bottom of the screen. That is the Comeback Sports hotline. You can call that in while the show's going on. If you want to call into our show and ask us a question, bring up another topic, comments on one of the topics we've already talked about, or if the show's not live, you can still call that number, leave a voicemail, and then we can play the voicemail back on the air the following week. So also feel free to do that as well. You can also tweet us a question. Let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about that we haven't talked about yet. Are there any sports topics we're missing? Let us know on social media. And also, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you give us a subscribe and make sure you can take a look at that subscription page. You'll see all the different videos, all the different cut-ups that our fantastic producer, Ben Kudo, does every single week. So make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. That's going to do it for Comeback Sports this week, folks. We'll see you next time. Have a good week, everybody. Stay cool out there in New England.
Summer Olympics coming out late July, and Messi signed with the New England Revolution if you're smart.